let's talk about how you can make money flipping properties in Ontario. What's going on, property hustlers? My name is Andrew, and today I want to tell you about how a friend of mine flipped his first property this summer in Hamilton, Ontario. Now, when my friend first approached me, he says, Andrew, I've been working for the last 10 years, saving every penny I can, and between me and my wife, I've only saved about $80,000, and I really want to pull the trigger on a property. However, I always feel like I don't have enough money, or I don't have the right qualifying criteria, or I can't find a property in my price range, or this isn't quite what I want. Listen, there is a common misconception about getting into real estate. You don't necessarily need to buy the property that you want. You need to buy the property you can afford and you can work. This is a bit of a business decision, and sometimes if you're working and saving, it will feel like you're saving against the real estate tide, and you might not ever make enough money to actually get that down payment. If you're in Toronto and you want to buy a property and you're looking at something over $1 million, I mean, what, you're going to do over $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 down payment? Any young person who's doing the grind, trying to make some money and buy a property will find that kind of thing really overwhelming, so I understand why it can be a very daunting thing. I basically told him that we should flip a property in Hamilton, Ontario, because this is where I do most of my real estate investing, and I can handhold him through the entire process. And the handholding part is really because if you haven't done this before, a lot of people find that flipping a property is a scary thing. It might look all great on Property Brothers or something like that, but it can be a little bit daunting when you're looking at what is unknown. $80,000, just to be clear, is not the most money to do something in real estate with. And this is what they were asking. When I told them let's flip a property, they're like, I barely have enough money to buy a property, let alone flip it. How am I supposed to acquire a property, renovate it, and then hold the property until it sells? It seems like a lot. So we did a little bit of house shopping, and here's what we found. This summer we went and we found a property in the Bayfront area of Hamilton. Now, this was actually a little bit closer to the industrial sector, and it was kind of on the cusp of where the Bayfront area starts and the industrial sector begins. Now, if you look at this property, it was such a disaster. Anybody going into this place wouldn't want to touch this property with a 10-foot pole, let alone imagine themselves potentially living in it or selling it to somebody who would want to live in it. But the difference between people who do real estate as a business versus people who are just buying a property for their own personal preferences is that real estate investors see opportunity when there's something to improve. Let's talk about what we did. This property is $375,000, and if you're looking for a property that's under $500,000, as a general rule of thumb, you can buy a property with 5% down, assuming you meet the qualifying criteria. Now, 5% down does come with a string attached, and that string is Cmhc Insurance. Cmhc, if you're putting 5% down, will run you about 4%. But the good thing is it doesn't count as an upfront cost. It gets rolled into your mortgage, and you pay it when either you refinance, sell, or whatever it is, or they basically add it onto your monthly mortgage payment. This is almost like a form of borrowing some money, something that will get you in the door. Whatever it is, it doesn't give you an upfront cost, which is what you want. Now, 5% down comes out to $18,750 as a down payment. And then you're gonna have $5,000 in lawyer fees and other closing costs. It's on the lower side because this is a cheap property, and well, look at it. So we're gonna try to keep things really simple here. We're not gonna remove any plumbing, we're not gonna rearrange anything, no taking down walls, everything's staying the same. So what we're gonna do is looking at the kitchen, we're gonna remove all the cabinets and just replace everything with all white cabinets, new white countertops, white backsplash, because this is just going to give a really nice clean effect. And then you can accent things, and we're choosing black accents because a black and white look is very photogenic, will look great in pictures. If you can post this on Instagram, it's a great product. Next, we're going to look at the bathroom. Again, in following the black and white theme, we're going to go with a darker floor, going to go with a simple small vanity. We're going to do white tiles all up the side just to give it a deeper look, because these tiles are glossy, and when you're working with a small bathroom, it's good to have something that gives a perception of depth. So when you're looking into these tiles, it definitely works. On top of that, that back wall that we're looking at, we're gonna add a nice big custom piece glass. And this isn't expensive. You can add this thing in there. And again, for context, all the supplies for this bathroom ran us a grand total of $1,500 or so plus taxes. That's just as supplies. And we're not going for anything crazy. We're just going with something that looks nice. Which now let's look at the living room and the bedrooms. The living room and the bedrooms, we did simple things. We removed any obstructing clauses that were built in there because they're not efficient. You know, you want to leave it up to whoever's buying the property to put their own product in there. So we basically installed new drywall everywhere, new floors throughout the entire property, new pot lights everywhere, and a nice fresh coat of paint. One of the most expensive things that we did here was actually now on the outside. It is expensive to get a lot of work done on the outside, and even the roof, we're looking at it, and now what are we gonna do? We're gonna do the roof, we don't wanna blow the budget, so we wanted to keep things as simple as possible. The gutters were this weird green color, so we replaced them to black, and anything that we couldn't replace, we just painted it to black and it looks better. On the outside, we did some new siding and we replaced all the windows. It's actually pretty amazing that we're able to get all this done for $50,000. But again, we are leveraging some connections, so we are getting a bit of a break on the prices, and people can do this. It's just a very honest day's work. You gotta remember that this is a very small space. So when you're using nicer materials, it's actually not costing you that much more, because it's not like you're doing it for a 2,500 square foot home. This is more like we're renovating an apartment. The most impressive thing I think about this project was that we were able to finish almost all the renovations in 4 weeks. That is crazy. That is by far the fastest project we've ever done, and it worked out really nice. The thing about staging here is that we are selling a few things other than the house. The area here was very important as part of our selection, because the thing is that this wasn't an area that has generally pretty limited inventory, and it is actually somewhere where there's a lot of development happening. In Hamilton, in the Bayfront area, there is a pier that's being developed. They've already broken ground, and they're expecting to have things done in a couple of years. It doesn't really matter whether or not it's currently finished. Any family moving into the area will be able to see that there is potential and there is room for growth. And our intention here was to sell the property at $525,000. Now, even if you wanted to keep it, and if you can't refinance it at 5% down, you're not really gonna pull a lot of your equity out. So selling it is still the best option here. And if you're selling it and somebody else is buying it with 5% down, because remember, around $500,000, you can put 5% down. That's only $26,000. Somebody's gonna buy a turnkey property for $525,000 with only $26,000 down. Now let's look at the numbers really quick. We're selling the property for $525,000, and we're subtracting $375,000, which we bought it for, less $50,000 that we spent renovating it, less $5,000 in miscellaneous carrying costs, less $10,000 roughly in the CMHC. I think it was a little more than that. Let's say $15,000. And now we also need to subtract the real estate commission, which is a little less than $25,000. That leaves us with a grand total of $55,000. Now this ROI comes to over 70% return on investment, and this is in a very short period of time. And one thing I want to stress here, what is most amazing about this project is how quickly it was done. This was definitely a record. We finished the renovations in a month after closing, and we're able to sell the property and close within 2 months after that on the market. And I want to point out that the reason why this happened is because he was working with us. And that's not to say that we're perfect either. It's just to say that he didn't have to go through a process where he had to figure everything out. We know how to go about renovating it so that it will sell for what we're looking for. So either way, I do hope you have found this video to be helpful or informative. In the meantime, if you are interested in learning how to flip a property, or you have one that you want to look into yourself and you want some help with it, feel free to reach out to us. We're going to leave some information about us in the description below, and we'll be happy to connect with you and go through the process with you. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you on the next one.